and it's a trick that I use to quickly identify if I'm dealing with a cyber VAR or a true MSP, is if the website really doesn't talk about proactive managed IT services. And if you don't want to use managed services, fine, come up with another term that means the same thing. But we're talking about proactive versus reactive IT services. These websites of these cyber VARs don't mention, if they mention at all, managed services. What they mention are security, cybersecurity. They will mention EDR. If they mention managed services, they might mention it like managed security in relation to or in context of their EDR product. But they're all products. They're all products that the VAR does not deliver, but rather they resell. We talk a lot about compliance, MSP risk, MSP security best practices on this channel, and we still will continue to do that. But it's kind of fun for me to go back to roots and go back to MSP, good old fashioned best practices. And the fundamentals of being an MSP are so important. Perhaps they've never been more important than they are today, because we have so many new providers, new blood coming into the profession, and they need guidance, right? They need a path to follow. They need to know that there are challenges that they will experience and that there are solutions to nearly all of those challenges. They just need to ask. They need to be aware and they need to ask for help. And I want to address one financial issue that I have seen now come up more than once. It's been happening for the last couple of years, and I think it's time that we all talk about it. So I'm gonna present it and throw it out there for public discussion, because it's a critical issue on a number of fronts, and that is profitability. MSP profitability, MSSP profitability. And we'll talk about what are the proper benchmarks for profit margins in our industry. We're going to talk about what is acceptable, what is unacceptable. We're going to talk about what are some of the leading causes of not being profitable or not being profitable enough. If you're doing certain things, they can absolutely lower your margins. They can absolutely lower efficiency and many other things, but margin is absolutely going to be impacted. And we'll tie that all together into what should you be doing in order to set your MSP practice or your MSSP practice on a profitable path. And if you are experiencing difficulty, give you some tips on how to identify where that kind of leaking gasket is in your engine. And I think you'll enjoy it. So let's get started. How did this all get brought up? I was scrolling through my favorite social media platforms, and I came across somebody, one of our good friends, Brent Watkins, former FBI special agent, retired, included me on this and said, hey, maybe you ought to take a look at this. And it was that, I don't want to say the individual's name. You can go out there and Google or Chat GPT or Grok or Copilot or whatever your favorite AI engine is, and go search for MSSP profitability, and you'll probably find a number of different resources. There's a lot out there, but the general claim is this: a very, very low percentage of MSSPs are showing high profitability. It's actually better reversed. There are a large number of MSSPs who show very low percentage of profitability, like below 10% is the number that I saw. And I looked at the number and the claim, and I was just like, okay, is this a joke? Is this a gag? Is someone not getting this? But it clearly said MSSPs have very low profitability. And I go back and search my memory for the last 30 years, and I say, do I ever recall a period in which someone said, being in managed services, especially in a boutique vertical market like security, as an MSSP is, has there ever been a time period where that has been a non-profitable or a very low profitable business? The answer is no. I don't remember it. And I'll be damned if we're going to enter a new era now where people are out there saying being an MSSP, that's very, very low profit margin. You don't want to do that. It's really not that good of a business model. VARs. I remember back in the 2000s, value-added resellers who were panicking left and right, trying to get out of that business model, trying to become MSPs, even though many of them didn't even know that managed services was available to them. They knew that something was wrong. The VAR business model ship was sinking. Like it had torpedoes coming at it left and right. And it was a dead, dying business model. That's why you saw so many thousands, I mean, tens of thousands of companies transition from being a VAR or a break fix company in the middle and early 2000s, basically all of the 2000s, 2000 to 2010 and beyond. That transition period happened for a reason. It was because of low margins. It was more than that. It was because of chaotic revenue, non-predictable revenue, and a whole bunch of other things. But it was also bad margins. The margins by this standard weren't bad back then, right? I mean, there were VARs that were making 15%, 12%, 20%, some of them, but they wanted more. They wanted the promise of what MSPs at that time were saying, well, I could make 30, 35, 40% margin in as managed services and not blink an eye, right? That they would hardly break a sweat and make that type of a profit margin. So you saw a bunch of VARs saying, well, I want that. That's what I want to be. And they made the transition. So when I hear MSSPs are only getting 8, 9, 10% margin, I'm thinking there's something wrong here. There's like a misfire. There's a miscommunication. Something is going on to cause this, because this is not right. This is not in any way indicative of the managed services profession. And so I came up with a list. I wrote it down. I'm going to relay my list and my thoughts to you here. Number one is go find out for yourself. Don't just take my word for it. Google this, search engine it, AI engine it, whatever we call it. Do AI engine something today? I don't know. Anyway, use whatever information portal you choose, but look into MSSP profitability. And I am sure you will find plenty of search results. And I think that most of them, or at least a handful of them, will reference low margins. There is a fair amount of this confusion and hype around low MSSP margins that I think is coming from vendors. And I know you've heard me for 5+ years talking on this channel, on this program, talking about cyber VARs, cyber security consultants, talking about this whole migration that started pre-pandemic about MSPs. You have to transition and become an MSSP, otherwise you're doomed. You're not going to succeed. The future is an MSSP. If that's true, and let's for a moment say that is true, that the MSP to MSSP conversion or upgrade or maturity, evolution, whatever you call it, was valid and did happen or is happening, then would it also make sense that you're seeing such low margins for those MSSPs, right? Does that make sense? Why would an entire industry be telling the MSPs, don't remain an MSP, become an MSSP, and you will get what? You will get lower margins than you had as an MSP. Does that make sense? It doesn't to me. Now, I can explain why that's happening, and I will. I'll give you my thoughts about why I think it's happening. But just from a holistic messaging, from an industry leadership standpoint, why on earth would anyone say, drop what you're doing as an MSP, become an MSSP, and become less profitable than you were as an MSP? Doesn't quite compute. At least to me, it doesn't. So I think a large factor of this is vendors who are selling security products. And I know what you're going to say. I'm not anti-security vendor. I'm not anti-security product. I wholeheartedly believe in the whole suite of security products and solutions that are out there. And yeah, so don't even go down that path. What I'm saying is, consider this for a moment. Maybe a whole bunch of security vendors sold a whole bunch of security products to the wrong people. What a thought, huh? What a thought. Would that not make sense? Would that not explain why we have, according to some of these reports, very low margins amongst MSSPs? Would that not explain that those MSSPs are not actually full-fledged, highly matured MSSPs. Maybe someone sold them a scalpel and they bought a scalpel. They paid a dear amount of money for that, and they think that they're a surgeon. They're a brain surgeon. They got a nice, shiny, sharp scalpel sold to them by a scalpel vendor. And they went to a conference and they said, if you buy this scalpel, you can do some amazing things. You'll become a surgeon. After all, surgeons have to have a scalpel, right? That's what they do. They cut. Same thing here. You can't be an MSSP without this product. You can't be an MSSP without these security solutions, this security stack. All of that makes sense. But what happens when I'm predicting has happened and is happening, and what I would be willing to bet a sizable amount of money is true, is that these companies that bought into that, who were not already legitimate MSPs, bought into this, signed up for it, assume and walk around today and think in their own heads, I'm an MSSP because I own a license to this type of security technology. And at the same time, I don't know how to be an MSP. I never was an MSP. I don't know how to do this in a scalable way, in an efficient, automated way. And as a result, I'm now filling out questionnaires about MSSP profitability, and I'm reporting that I have a very low profitability margin. Does that not make more sense to all of you? If I am completely off base, send me a comment, shoot me an email, tell me how full of it I am, how wrong I am. If there was another theory out there, I would love to know it, because I don't want to go willingly down a path that is absolutely wrong. Explain to me why that's wrong. I don't think it is. I've been doing this too long. And I've been wrong about things before, but there's no other competing explanation for why profitability amongst MSSPs would be that low unless there was a huge misfire amongst the people who are responding to these surveys saying, I am an MSSP and I have really, really low margins, like margins lower than what generic VARs in the 2000s were earning. Like, I'm that bad that I'm rock bottom. Now, I just thought of I thought of an explanation that could actually not challenge, but modify my earlier explanation. And that is something that I'm going to talk about, which is there's just a lack of knowledge. There's a lack of knowledge of how to implement these tools and how to deliver them in a modern tech service delivery, and that would explain it. Also, their misconception that they are actually an MSSP. I am going to address the fact that there are legitimate MSSPs out there who do legitimate work, who have truly scalable, automated, efficient, high margin. High margin is not bad. If you're an MSSP or an MSP and you generate high margins, do not be ashamed, because that is a necessary component of your practice for you to be doing what you do. If you're bare bones margins, you are at risk for yourself and you're at risk for every single installed managed services customer. So don't be afraid of high margins. But I suspect that, again, the vendor marketing machine around getting legitimate, much needed technologies out into the hands of the frontline cybersecurity defenders may have gotten into more hands that are just not qualified to do this type of work and are, as a consequence, dragging down the profitability scale for the rest of the profession. And again, it's hard to assign blame to the vendors because they're just doing what it's in their best interest to do. It's the responsibility of the MSP profession at large. It's the responsibility of the MSP Alliance to make the world aware that we do have standards. We do have expectations of performance in our profession. That's what makes us a profession. And not everyone gets to say that they're an MSSP. We can't stop people legally from saying they're an MSSP. But what we can do is use these types of platforms to educate those of you out there as to what is really happening and to make you aware that there is a very big distinction between profitable and non-profitable MSSPs, and there are reasons why they are profitable or not. And we can demonstrate very easily to those who need to make decisions which type of an MSP they're dealing with. So how would you go about building profitability into an MSP or MSSP practice? Talk about that next. The first thing that I see when I am dealing with MSSPs who come into the membership, and I see this very easily, and I'll tell you right now what it's not a trick, it's just an observation that has proven true. you can very quickly tell a quote pure play. I call them cyber VARs, right? They call themselves MSSPs. That's probably the mistake. I'm going to call them a cyber VAR. If you don't know what a cyber VAR is, go check out the previous episode. A few episodes ago, we talked about what cyber VARs are. Cyber VARs are the perfect name for what the rest of the community may call, and likely does call, an MSSP. They are the vast majority, especially those who are like reporting really low profitability margins, they don't deserve to be called an MSSP because they're not. They deserve to be called a cyber VAR. That's what they do. That's what the business model actually is that they are engaged in. So let's start by just calling them what they are. That will help immensely. If you are a company and you are already engaged in these services, or you want to be based on this program, like you're buying into this and you want to be a true MSP or MSSP, here are some things that you need to do. And we've talked about this. We've gone over these in writings, in podcasts, in webinars, in MSP World Conference sessions going back decades. So the material's out there. Service catalog. You need to have a service catalog. And if your service catalog, what is a service catalog? Very quickly, for those of you who are not aware, a service catalog is a menu for an MSP where they articulate every type of service option and deliverable that they will sell and charge for to their customer. So that would include things like basic monitoring, remote management, security solutions like EDR, MDR, SOC as a service. It might include software that they sell or resell, like Microsoft 365 or Google or things of that nature, right? So those are all elements of a service catalog that would be delivered by an MSP. And yes, you should actually articulate those in some sort of writing. It should be in a document. And you should go through the practice, if you haven't already done it, to create a service catalog. And what I notice, going back a few moments ago when I said what I observe, and it's a trick that I use to quickly identify if I'm dealing with a cyber VAR or a true MSP, is if the website really doesn't talk about proactive managed IT services. And if you don't want to use managed services, fine, come up with another term that means the same thing. But we're talking about proactive versus reactive IT services. These websites of these cyber VARs don't mention, if they mention at all, managed services. What they mention are security, cybersecurity. They will mention EDR. If they mention managed services, they might mention it like managed security in relation to or in context of their EDR product. But they're all products. They're all products that the VAR does not deliver, but rather they resell. If you're asking me, Charles, isn't that exactly what an MSP does? Yes, but an MSP will use products, and depending on what the product is, they'll either resell the product or they will bake the product, integrate the product into that service catalog so that it is a unique MSP product and not just brand Z's antivirus or brand X's backup service. Right? It becomes the MSP's, if I was doing it, it would be Charlie's backup service, not this is vendor Y and I'm reselling vendor Y to you. And I'm charging a 10% upgrade fee or margin upgrade for myself, right? That's not how most MSPs operate. They integrate solutions and vendors from their supply chain into a service catalog that they, the MSP, deliver and brand to their customer. That is very, very different than how a cyber VAR operates. Service catalogs. If you don't have it, create it. They will be a lifesaver. They will make things a lot easier. They will streamline your business from day one because it's going to be a necessary predicate upon which you build your contracts, how you invoice, how you reconcile, how you do change management, how you do everything in your business, from accounting to sales to marketing to service delivery. All of that hinges around, do you have a service catalog? It's necessary. Service delivery controls related to the service delivery of your service catalog. Do you have them? If all you are doing as a cyber VAR is just reselling an EDR service and your function is to be a billing agent, here's a wake-up call. you are not in the MSP profession. You are a VAR. That is all you are doing. You are not, if you're not having access to the customer environment, if you're not doing actual triage work, if you're not actually helping the customer to implement controls, to implement change, to use the information generated from this hypothetical EDR scenario I'm presenting here, then you're really of minimal value compared to what an MSP would do, which is become vastly more involved, deeply, intimately involved with the customer, using that EDR technology to do a variety of things that are necessary for the customer, but are distinctly different than being a reseller of just an EDR service. And finally, policies and procedures, right? All of these things are kind of fundamental, kind of plain vanilla, necessary things that you should be doing as a managed service provider. In my professional experience, the cyber VAR doesn't do really much of this at all. There are some exceptions. Those would be more true cybersecurity consultants who are not really in the value-added reseller business. They're more in the consultative business. They know they're not an MSP. They don't pretend to be an MSP. They are only really working as a professional services organization. Now, I'm not talking about those types of companies here. And I don't think that those types of companies, if they even did respond to that MSSP profitability report, that they would report that they had very low margins. In fact, I think that they would be quite the opposite. So, service catalog, service delivery controls, and policies and procedures all will have a very high level of impact on your ability to generate healthy, sustainable profit margins. Why is profitability so important in the managed services profession? I'll tell you why. The role of the MSP from the mid to early 90s, when the first MSPs originated and started selling their services to customers, the unique nature of the business model that they brought with them was a one-to-many model of service. And that was a game changer for IT. One-to-many in other industries have existed before, but one-to-many in IT was the providence of the MSP profession. And since those early days to today, the idea that an MSP has to be sustainable, they have to be a viable corporate entity, or they have to be a viable division of a larger entity, a larger company, in order to fulfill their pledge, their commitment to a customer, to be available, to be secure, to be competent and experienced in everything that they do for that customer. If the division or the company is on shaky financial ground, that jeopardizes not just the first client, it jeopardizes every managed services customer that uses that MSP. That has always been the case. It will always be the case. It won't change. It also, that one-to-many unique nature and relationship is also why MSPs are so targeted by bad actors today, and why MSPs are so necessary as frontline cyber defense agents. We need them healthy, earning a respectable, healthy profit margin for them to be doing what they do, right? Why would you make a frontline cyber defense have the lowest profit margin you could possibly have? This is why I'm so against the race to the bottom for profitability and pricing. I think it's a losing game. It always has been. That will never change either. So profitability is a marker of overall health of the MSP. If you're not showing respectable profit margins, you're not healthy as an MSP. You're not going to be able in the long term to really serve your customers in the way that they need to be served. You're at risk. And again, that's why I dislike this naming of MSSPs, who are really cyber VARs, because it puts our whole industry and profession at risk when we confuse things to that degree. MSPs have to have profit margin in order to not just be viable, but they have to constantly, as they have been for 3+ decades. MSPs are constantly re-evaluating the landscape. They are reevaluating their own technology stack. They are reevaluating their own process. They are reevaluating everything with an eye towards becoming more efficient, more viable, more automated, more secure, everything. Year after year, the MSPs that I know who are best in class are never happy with the status quo. They are always trying to improve. They are always seeking perfection, even if they never achieve it. They are always seeking alternatives to a dynamically changing environment where their themselves and their customers are constantly put at risk and under cyber attack. It is the job of the MSP to continually reinvest in themselves on behalf of their customers. And you need healthy profit margins in order to do that. And I'm going to go to one of our Inspire meetings next week. And the agenda is, and these are all certified, MSP verified. Some of them have SOC 2s. But these are all certified MSPs. They're all competent individuals and organizations. And the bulk of the discussion is going to be refinement and improvement. They are never happy with the status quo where they're currently at. They are always trying to perfect themselves and improve. And they can do that, and they do that as a direct result of their profitability status as an MSP. They would not be able to do these types of exercises and learn from one another and improve if they were suffering from very low margins like these reports are indicating, which again gets back to the sustainability of these quote MSSPs. I call them cybervars. How can they improve? How can they become what they need to be for their customers with such meager margins? It's just not possible, folks. So by the way, if you're wondering what is the official role of financial status in the MSP profession, in the official framework, the UCS, the Unified Certification Standard for Cloud and Managed Service Providers, that framework, unlike many other frameworks, I think any other framework on the planet, that is a cyber framework. It includes unique business, financial, operational metrics that must be proven in order to achieve certification. That's part of it. You can't become certified unless you demonstrate those fundamentals. See, it's not just about whether you're doing things technically. It's how do you combine all of them into a unique service package, and how do you generate enough revenue and margin in order for you to become sustainable and valuable as a defender of all your customers' data and security infrastructure. That's what it's really all about. So I hope that this is helpful. And if you are one of those MSSPs out there and you are saying to yourself, why, I didn't know that I was a cybervar. I don't want to be a cybervar. I want to be an MSP or an MSSP. How do I change? We can help. Let us know. We can put you in touch with other MSPs. We can show you a path towards profitability. We can show you a path towards efficiency and automation in managed services. Check out the UCS. It's a standard. It's a public standard. Go there and start your journey there. But do one thing if you do anything at all from this episode. Don't assume that 8%, 9%, 10% margins in managed services are acceptable. They are not. I hope all of you know that and reject that notion. And if you see something or hear somebody say that at a conference, say something. Call it out. I think that's what we need to do. I think we need to call these types of things out and say it for what it is. Like, you're not talking about our profession. You're talking about VARs. And we don't consider VARs and their profit margins in managed services. That's a business model we left behind ages ago. I hope this helps. Stay profitable. Stay safe. Next time.